There are some truths so painful that history tried to bury them beneath silence. Truths so disturbing that even those who lived through them struggled to speak, and yet they happened. They were real, and they shaped lives in ways we can barely begin to understand. Imagine a woman carrying life inside her, a child not yet born, fragile, innocent, untouched by the world. Now imagine that same woman forced to lie face down in a hole dug into the earth, her body stretched over the edge of a pit, her stomach hanging in empty space just to keep the unborn child from being crushed. While behind her, a man raises a whip. Not once, not twice, but again and again, each strike cutting into her back, each sound echoing through the air, each moment a test of how much pain a human being can endure without breaking. This was not rare. This was not an isolated act of cruelty. This was a system, a method, a calculated form of punishment used on pregnant, enslaved women. And today you are about to hear one of those stories. A story that was never meant to be told. Welcome to Erased But Not Gone, where we bring forgotten history back into the light. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you are watching from, your city and your country, and if you have not already, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because stories like this must never be erased. Now let's dive into our story for today. Her name was Amara, though it was not the name given to her at birth. That name had been taken long ago, replaced with one chosen by the man who claimed ownership over her. A name easier for him to say, easier for him to control. But deep within her, she still remembered the sound of the name her mother once whispered. A name tied to a life that felt distant now, almost like a dream she was no longer allowed to hold on to. She was around 24 years old, living on a plantation in South Carolina in the early 1800s. A place where the sun rose over fields that never seemed to end and set behind a reality that never changed. Days filled with labor, nights filled with exhaustion, and in between, moments of fear that could come without warning, without reason, without mercy. Amara had learned to survive in silence, to move carefully, to speak only when necessary, to lower her gaze when others looked at her. Because even the smallest act could be misunderstood, could be punished, could lead to consequences she had seen too many times before. She had also learned something else, something she never spoke aloud, that her body was not her own, that it could be used, controlled, claimed in ways she could not stop. And now she carried the result of that reality, a child growing inside her, a life she could not protect in the way she wanted to, a life that existed within a system that would decide its fate before it even took its first breath. And that knowledge weighed on her more heavily than anything else, because it was not just her own survival she had to think about anymore. It was something more fragile, more vulnerable, something that depended entirely on her endurance. Despite everything, she held on to small moments, brief seconds where she would place her hand over her stomach, feeling the faint movements within, reminding herself that something alive was there, something real, something worth holding on to, even in a world that offered so little hope. But hope in that place was dangerous, and it did not take much for it to be shattered. The day everything changed began like any other. The same routines, the same tasks, the same unspoken tension that filled the air. But there was something different beneath the surface, something Amara could not immediately see but could feel. A shift, subtle but present, like the calm before something inevitable. The overseer had been watching more closely that day, his movements sharper, his voice harsher, and those who had lived long enough to recognize such signs knew what it meant. Trouble not always deserved not, always explained, but always coming. At some point, an accusation was made, not against Amara directly, but against someone in the group. Something about work not done correctly, something about disobedience, something that required punishment to set an example. Because that was how control was maintained, not through fairness, not through reason, but through fear. The decision came quickly. It always did, and once made, it could not be undone. Amara's name was called. Her body tensed instantly, her breath catching in her chest. Because even though she had done nothing wrong, even though she had followed every rule, every expectation, she knew that innocence did not protect anyone in that place. It never had. She stepped forward slowly, her movements controlled, her mind racing, trying to understand why, trying to prepare for what was coming. But there was no preparation for this, there never was. The order was given, a pit was to be dug, not for burial, not for shelter, but for punishment. The ground was hard, the earth resisting at first, but it did not matter. The men tasked with digging worked quickly, efficiently, as if they had done this before, as if this was routine, because for them, it was. And as the hole took shape, as the soil was removed and the space became clear, the purpose of it became undeniable. Amara felt it before she fully understood it, a deep, sinking realization that settled in her chest, heavy and cold, because she had heard of this before. Whispers, quiet stories passed between women who had survived it, stories no one wanted to speak too loudly because speaking made it real. The pit was not for her, it was for the child inside her to protect it. While she was punished, the logic was cruel, the intention clear. The punishment would continue, but the unborn child must not be harmed, not out of compassion, but out of ownership, because even that child was considered property. Amara's heart pounded as they led her toward it, each step heavier than the last, each moment stretching into something she wished she could escape. But there was no escape, not here, not now. She reached the edge of the pit, and for a brief second she hesitated, not because she believed she could refuse, but because her body reacted instinctively to the fear, to the knowledge of what was about to happen. Hands pushed her forward, forcing her into position. Her body stretched across the opening, her stomach suspended above the hollow space below. Her arms pulled forward, her legs held in place, leaving her completely exposed, completely vulnerable. And then the whip was raised. The first strike came without warning, the sound cutting through the air before the pain even registered. Sharp, immediate, impossible to ignore. And her body reacted instantly, her muscles tightening, her breath breaking as the reality of it hit her fully. This was not just punishment. This was endurance. This was survival, and it had only just begun. The first strike had barely settled into her skin before the second followed. Then the third, each one landing with a force that carried both sound and pain together. The sharp crack of the whip cutting through the air, followed by the deeper, heavier impact against her back. And with each strike, Amara's body reacted instinctively, her muscles tightening, her breath breaking, her fingers digging into the earth in front of her, as if the ground itself could hold her together. The position made everything worse. Her stomach suspended above the hollow space below, her weight distributed in a way that strained every part of her body. Her back fully exposed, unable to twist, unable to shield herself, unable to do anything but endure. And that helplessness was as painful as the whip itself. The overseer did not rush. There was no urgency in his movements, no sign of hesitation. Each strike delivered with a measured rhythm, as if this was a task like any other, as if the suffering before him was nothing more than part of the routine. And that calmness, that control, made it even more terrifying for those who watched. Amara's voice broke into the air, not as a scream at first, but as a sound pulled from deep within her. Something between breath and pain, something that carried the weight of everything she was trying to hold back. Because she was not just enduring for herself anymore, she was enduring for the life inside her, the child that depended on her strength, on her ability to survive what was happening without letting it take more than it already had. The ground beneath her hands became her only connection to stability, her fingers pressing into the soil, gripping it as tightly as she could, as if holding onto something solid could keep her from falling apart completely. And yet, with each strike, that grip weakened. Not because she wanted it to, but because her body was being pushed beyond what it could sustain. The pain did not remain the same. It changed, it spread. The first strikes were sharp, cutting, immediate. But as they continued, the sensation deepened, becoming something heavier, something that lingered, something that did not fade before the next strike came, until it all began to blur together, each moment overlapping with the next, creating a constant, unbroken wave of pain that made it difficult to separate one second from another. Around her, the world continued. The sounds of the plantation did not stop completely, but they seemed distant now, overshadowed by the rhythm of the whip, by the tension in the air, by the silent understanding among those who watched that this could be any one of them, that no one was beyond reach, that survival here was never guaranteed. The other women watched in silence, their faces still, their eyes filled with something that went beyond fear, something that held recognition, memory, and a deep, unspoken understanding of what Amara was enduring, because many of them had either faced it themselves or knew someone who had. And in that shared awareness, there was both pain and connection, a quiet bond formed not by choice, but by circumstance. Amara's breathing became harder to control. Each inhale shorter, each exhale heavier, her chest rising and falling unevenly as she fought to maintain some level of steadiness. Because losing control now would only make it worse, would only shorten her endurance, would only risk more than she could afford to lose the child. The thought of it returned again and again, not as a distraction, but as an anchor, something she held on to with everything she had left. Because even in the middle of this, even as her body absorbed each strike, she refused to let go of that awareness, that there was life inside her, that this pain, as unbearable as it was, had a purpose beyond itself, survival for two, not one. The overseer paused briefly, not out of mercy but out of calculation. A moment to assess, to decide whether the punishment had reached its intended effect. But whatever he saw, whatever he thought, it was not enough. The whip rose again, and the strikes continued. The sun above did not slow, the time of day shifting gradually. But for Amara, time had lost its normal meaning. It was no longer measured in hours or minutes, but in strikes, in breaths, in moments of endurance that stretched far beyond what should have been possible. Her body began to tremble, not from weakness alone, but from the effort of holding herself in place, of resisting the instinct to collapse, to pull away, to escape even for a second, because she knew that movement could bring more force, more punishment, more pain. And so she remained, her will stronger than her body, her determination pushing her through what felt like the edge of her limits. At some point, the pain shifted again. It became distant, not gone but different, as if her body, overwhelmed, had begun to separate itself from the sensation, to dull it just enough to allow her to continue, to survive, to remain conscious in a situation that could easily take that from her. And in that distance, she found a small space, a narrow place where she could hold on to herself, where she could keep going even as everything else seemed to fall away. But that space was fragile, and it did not last. Forever another strike, another surge, another reminder that this was real, that it was still happening, that it was not over. Her voice returned stronger this time, not as a plea, not as a cry for mercy, but as something else, something deeper, a release of what could not be contained, a sound that carried both pain and resistance, both suffering and survival, and it echoed through the space, through the watching silence, through the moment that seemed to hold everything in place. The overseer stepped back again, the whip lowered, the air shifted slightly, the tension changing, not disappearing but altering, in a way that suggested something was coming to an end, or at least to a pause. Amara's body remained in position, her strength barely holding, her breath uneven, her mind trying to catch up with what had just happened, with what she had endured, with the realization that she was still there, still conscious, still holding on. Hands approached her again, not to strike, but to move her, to release her from the position that had held her in place for what felt like an eternity. And as they lifted her, as her body was pulled away from the pit, as her weight shifted back onto solid ground, the full extent of what she had endured began to settle in, not just as pain, but as something deeper, something that would stay with her long after the marks on her skin had begun to heal. But even then, even in that moment, as she struggled to stand, as her body trembled beneath her, as her strength threatened to give way, she held on to one thing, the life inside her, and the knowledge that she had survived this. But the story was far from over. The ground felt different beneath her when they finally let go. Not softer, not safer, but real in a way the edge of the pit had not been. And yet her legs struggled to remember how to hold her, how to carry her weight, how to keep her upright after everything they had been forced to endure. And for a moment, Amara swayed, her balance uncertain, her vision narrowing as the world around her seemed to shift in slow, uneven waves. Hands steadied her, not from kindness, but from necessity, because even in this moment, she was still considered valuable, still something that must be kept alive. And that realization carried its own kind of weight, a reminder that survival here was not freedom, it was function. She was led away from the pit, her steps unsteady, her body responding to each movement with a deep, persistent ache that spread across her back, through her shoulders, down into her arms, and yet she forced herself to move, to stay conscious, to remain present, because she knew that collapsing completely would not bring relief. It would only bring more attention, more control, more vulnerability. The other women watched her as she passed, their expressions quiet, heavy, filled with a recognition that needed no words. Some lowered their eyes, others held her gaze for just a moment longer than usual, a silent exchange of understanding, of shared endurance, of a reality they all knew too well. And in that brief connection, Amara felt something that had been absent during the punishment itself. Not relief, not safety, but solidarity. A reminder that she was not alone in what she had experienced. She was taken to a shaded area, away from the direct heat of the sun, and there she was left, not completely alone, but no longer the center of attention, no longer the focus of the moment. And as the world around her resumed its rhythm, as the sounds of work, movement, and distant voices returned, she became aware of something else. The quiet, the absence of immediate danger. The space to feel what had just happened fully. Her body began to react in new ways, the pain shifting, deepening, spreading as the initial intensity settled into something more constant, more sustained. Each breath bringing with it a reminder of the strain, each movement carrying a weight that had not been there before. And yet beneath all of it, there was something else, something that had not been taken from her. The child, her hand, moved slowly, carefully, resting against her stomach, the motion deliberate, protective, almost instinctive. And for a moment, everything else faded. The pain, the surroundings, the memory of the whip, all of it giving way to that single point of connection. She waited. Not for long, but long enough to feel something, a faint movement, subtle but real. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Something deeper than relief, deeper than survival. Something that grounded her in a way nothing else could, because it meant that despite everything, despite what had just been done to her, the life inside her remained. She closed her eyes briefly, not to escape, but to hold on to that feeling, to let it settle, to let it remind her why she had endured, why she had held on even when her body had reached its limit. And when she opened them again, there was a change in her gaze, not dramatic, not sudden, but present. A quiet determination that had been there before but had now been strengthened by what she had survived. Time moved slowly after that, each moment stretching, each hour carrying the weight of what had happened, but also bringing with it a gradual return of awareness, of control, of the ability to think beyond the immediate pain and consider what came next. Because there was always a next moment, always another day, always another challenge. And Amara knew that what had happened at the pit was not an ending. It was part of something larger, part of a system that would continue as long as she remained within it, part of a reality that would not change on its own. That realization did not bring despair. It brought clarity, a sharp, undeniable understanding that survival alone was not enough, that enduring what was given to her, accepting what could not be changed, would only lead to more of the same, more pain, more control, more moments like the ones she had just lived through. And for the first time, that understanding began to take shape as something more than thought. It became a question, a possibility, something she had never allowed herself to fully consider before. Not because it had not existed, but because it had been too dangerous, too uncertain, too costly to even imagine escape. The word formed quietly in her mind, not spoken, not shared, but present, undeniable, carrying with it both hope and fear, because she knew what it meant. She knew the risks. She knew the consequences. If it failed, she had seen them, heard them, felt them through the stories of others who had tried and not succeeded. But she also knew something else. She knew what staying meant. She knew what her future would look like if nothing changed. She knew that the child she carried would be born into the same system, the same control, the same lack of choice, and that thought was something she could not ignore. Something that pressed against her more strongly than any fear of failure ever had. As the day moved forward, as the light began to shift and the shadows lengthen, Amara remained where she had been left, her body slowly adjusting, her strength returning in small, careful increments, but her mind was no longer still, no longer focused only on endurance. It was moving, planning, questioning, searching for something more because now, after everything she had endured, after everything she had survived, a new understanding had taken root. And once that understanding exists, it cannot be undone. The path ahead was unclear. The risks were undeniable. The cost could be everything. But for the first time, Amara was not only thinking about survival, she was thinking about freedom. And that thought would change everything. The idea did not leave her. It did not fade with time or get buried beneath the routine of survival. Instead, it stayed, growing quietly, taking shape in the spaces between her daily movements, in the moments when she was alone with her thoughts, in the seconds when her hand rested over her stomach and she felt the faint reminder of the life depending on her. And with each passing day, the question of escape became less distant, less impossible, and more real, more urgent, more necessary. Amara moved carefully, just as she always had, but now her awareness had shifted. She was no longer observing only to avoid punishment. She was observing to understand, to learn, to find patterns, weaknesses, possibilities. She watched the overseers more closely, noted when their attention drifted, when their movements became predictable, when their routines left small gaps that might otherwise go unnoticed. She listened as well, to quiet conversations, to fragments of stories passed between others, to mentions of places beyond the plantation, places where control was not the same, where people could exist without being owned. These stories were never spoken loudly, never confirmed with certainty, but they existed, and that alone was enough to give her something to hold on to. Her condition made everything more complicated. Her body was still healing, her strength not yet fully restored, and the life inside her added a layer of vulnerability that could not be ignored. She could not move as quickly, could not endure the same physical strain as before. And yet, that same reality also made the need to act stronger, because waiting too long could mean losing the opportunity entirely, could mean bringing a child into a world she already knew too well. The days passed, each one bringing small pieces of understanding, small details that began to connect into something larger. A rough outline of what might be possible. She learned which paths were less watched, which times of day carried more distraction, which individuals might be less likely to notice a quiet absence. And though none of it formed a complete plan, it was a beginning. At night, when the work was done and the plantation settled into a different kind of silence, Amara allowed herself to think more freely, to consider what she would need, what she could carry, what she would have to leave behind. And with each thought came another layer of risk, another possibility of failure, another reminder of how fragile any attempt would be. But alongside that fear was something else, a growing sense of resolve. Because the memory of the pit had not faded, the feeling of being held over that empty space, the sound of the whip, the knowledge that her body had been treated as something to be used and controlled, all of it remained, and it shaped her understanding of what would happen if she did nothing, if she stayed, if she accepted the life that had been forced upon her. One evening, as the light began to fade and the air cooled slightly, she found herself near the edge of the fields, not far from where the trees began. A boundary she had never crossed but had often looked toward, and in that moment, she allowed herself to imagine what lay beyond it. Not in detail, not with certainty, but with possibility. A different space, a different life, a different future for herself, for the child she carried. The thought was both powerful and terrifying, because imagining something different made the reality she lived in feel even more unbearable. And yet it also gave her strength, a reason to continue thinking, to continue searching for a way forward. It was during one of these quiet moments that something unexpected happened. A voice spoke softly behind her, not loud, not commanding, but careful. She turned slowly, her body tense, her mind immediately alert, because unexpected interaction was rarely safe. But what she saw was not what she expected. It was an older woman, someone she recognized but did not know well, someone who had been on the plantation longer than most, someone whose presence was often quiet, unnoticed, but whose eyes carried a depth that suggested she had seen more than she ever spoke. The woman looked at her steadily, not with judgment, not with suspicion, but with something else, something that felt almost like understanding. And then she spoke again, her words low, deliberate, chosen with care. She said that she had been watching, that she had seen the change in Amara, the way she observed, the way she moved, the way she seemed to be, searching for something beyond the routine. And for a moment, Amara felt a surge of fear, because being seen in that way could be dangerous, could lead to exposure, could bring consequences she was not prepared to face. But the woman did not call for anyone. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she stepped closer and spoke words that shifted everything. She said, "You are thinking of leaving." The statement hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. And for a moment, Amara did not respond, because admitting it, even silently, felt like crossing a line she could not return from. But the woman did not wait for confirmation. She continued, her voice steady. She spoke of others who had tried, some who had failed, some who had succeeded. Though those were fewer, she spoke of paths, of risks, of the reality of what escape truly meant. Not just the act of leaving, but the journey that followed, the uncertainty, the danger, the need for preparation and patience. And then she said something else, something that settled deeply within Amara. She said, "If you are going to do this, you cannot do it alone." The words carried both warning and possibility, a recognition that while escape was possible, it was not something that could be done without knowledge, without support, without understanding the full weight of what it required. Amara felt the moment shift around her, the quiet space between them filled with something new, something that had not existed before, a connection. Not forced, not demanded, but offered. And in that offer was a choice to trust or to turn away, to step forward or to remain where she was. She looked at the woman, really looked at her, searching for something that could guide her decision, something that could tell her whether this was a risk worth taking. And what she saw was not certainty, not guarantee, but honesty, a reflection of the reality she already knew, the danger, the difficulty, the cost, but also the possibility. And for the first time, the idea of escape was no longer just her own thought. It was something shared, something that could become real if she chose to follow it. And as she stood there at the edge of the fields, with the fading light around her and the quiet presence of someone who understood what she was facing, Amara made a decision. Not spoken, not announced, but clear. She would not stay. She would not accept the life that had been forced upon her. She would find a way out, no matter the cost. And with that decision, the path ahead began to take shape. A path filled with risk, with uncertainty, with danger, but also with something she had never truly had before, a chance. The decision once made did not bring immediate relief. It brought urgency, a quiet but constant pressure that followed Amara through every movement, every breath, every moment of the day. Because now she was no longer simply enduring her reality, she was preparing to leave it. And that preparation required a different kind of awareness, a sharper focus, a deeper level of caution than she had ever needed before. The older woman did not speak openly again in crowded spaces, did not draw attention to the connection, but in brief, carefully timed moments, she shared what she knew, small pieces at a time, enough to guide but not enough to expose them if overheard. She spoke of directions, of how to follow the stars when there was no path, of how to listen for water, of how to avoid roads that seemed safe but were watched more closely than they appeared. And most importantly, she spoke of patience, of waiting for the right moment rather than forcing one too soon. Amara absorbed everything, her mind holding onto each detail, each instruction, each warning, because she knew that once she left, there would be no one to correct her, no one to guide her further. Every decision would be hers alone, and every mistake could cost her everything. Her body continued to recover slowly, the wounds on her back healing enough to allow movement without constant strain. Though the pain never fully disappeared, it lingered, a reminder of what had been done to her, a reminder of why she could not stay. And as her strength returned, so did her ability to prepare in more practical ways. She began to take note of what she could carry. Not much, because anything visible could raise suspicion, but small things, hidden things, items that could make a difference without being noticed. A piece of cloth, a small amount of food saved carefully over time, nothing that would stand out, nothing that would draw attention, everything chosen with purpose. The days passed, each one bringing her closer to the moment she would have to act, and with each passing day, the tension grew. Not outwardly, not in a way others could easily see, but within her, a steady build of anticipation, of fear, of determination, all existing together in a balance that had to be maintained. The child within her continued to move, subtle but present, a constant reminder of what was at stake, of why this could not be delayed, why waiting too long was no longer an option, because soon her condition would make movement more difficult, more dangerous, and the window of opportunity would begin to close. She knew it had to be soon. And then the moment came. It did not arrive with warning, not in a way that announced itself clearly, but in a shift, a small change in the rhythm of the plantation. The kind of change she had learned to recognize. The overseers distracted, their attention divided, the routine slightly altered in a way that created gaps, brief openings that would not last long but were enough if used correctly. Amara felt it immediately, a sense that this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would not come again in the same way. And with that realization, everything inside her aligned. The fear, the preparation, the determination, all focused on a single point. She moved carefully, just as she always had, nothing in her actions suggesting anything different, nothing that would draw attention, her steps measured, her expression controlled, her presence blending into the normal flow of the day. And then, at the right moment, when no one was watching closely, when the space between one task and the next allowed for it, she stepped away. Not abruptly, not noticeably, just enough to begin moving toward the edge of the fields, the same edge where she had once stood and imagined something beyond. Now it was no longer imagination, it was action. Each step carried weight, not just physically, but with the knowledge of what it meant, that with every movement forward, she was leaving behind everything she had known, everything that had defined her life up to that point, and there would be no turning back. She reached the boundary where the trees began, the place that had always marked the limit of her world, and for a brief second she paused, not out of doubt but out of recognition. This was the line between what had been and what could be, and then she crossed it. The forest closed around her, the light shifting, the sounds changing, the air itself feeling different, thicker, more alive and yet more uncertain, because beyond the plantation, there were no clear rules, no predictable patterns, only the unknown, and the unknown carried its own dangers. But she did not stop. She could not stop, not now. Her pace remained steady, not too fast to draw attention if seen from a distance, not too slow to waste the time she had, her body responding to the movement with a mix of strength and strain. Her mind focused on the instructions she had been given, on the direction she needed to follow, on the need to stay aware of everything around her. The deeper she moved into the forest, the more the sounds of the plantation faded, replaced by the natural world, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of animals, the subtle shifts of wind through branches. And though it was unfamiliar, it was also freeing in a way she had never experienced before, because these sounds did not carry control. did not signal commands or punishment. They simply existed. Time passed, though it felt different now, each moment filled with movement, with purpose, with the need to continue. And as the light began to change, again as the day moved toward evening, she knew that the next phase of her journey was approaching. Night movement under darkness, following the path she had memorized, trusting that it would lead her somewhere beyond the reach of those who would come looking. Because she knew they would come, they always did. The realization did not slow her. It pushed her forward because now more than ever, she understood that this was not just escape, this was survival. This was the fight for a future she had never been allowed to imagine before. And as the last light of the day began to fade and the shadows of the forest grew longer, Amara moved deeper into the unknown, carrying with her nothing but what she could hold, what she could remember, and the unbreakable will to keep going no matter what lay ahead. Night did not arrive gently. It settled over the forest like a curtain, thick and complete, changing everything at once. The paths that had been barely visible in fading light now disappeared into shadow, the shapes of trees blending into one another, the ground beneath her feet uncertain, uneven, filled with roots and hidden obstacles that threatened to slow her at every step. And yet this darkness was not her enemy. It was her cover, her protection, the one advantage she had against those who would be searching for her. Amara moved carefully, each step deliberate, guided not by sight alone, but by memory, by instinct, by the instructions she had repeated to herself so many times that they had become part of her. She kept her pace steady, not rushing, not panicking, because she knew that losing control now would lead to mistakes, and mistakes in the dark could be dangerous in ways she could not afford. Her breathing was measured, controlled, her hand resting against her stomach again as she moved, a constant reminder of why she could not stop, why she could not allow fear to take over. The child within her shifting slightly as if responding to her movement, and that small sensation gave her strength, grounded her, reminded her that she was not alone in this journey. The forest around her was alive with sound, not threatening but unfamiliar. The rustle of leaves, the distant calls of animals, the occasional snap of a branch beneath her foot, each noise amplified by the silence that surrounded it, each one forcing her to pause, to listen, to make sure she was not being followed, not being watched, because even in the darkness, the risk remained. She knew they would come looking. She knew the moment her absence was noticed, the search would begin, the patterns she had studied would shift, the gaps she had used would close, and the plantation would turn its attention outward, into the same forest she was now moving through. And that thought pushed her forward, faster, stronger, more focused. The hours passed slowly, each one stretching under the weight of movement, of awareness, of the constant need to stay hidden, to stay quiet, to stay on the path she had chosen. And as time moved, so did she, deeper into the forest, farther from the life she had left behind, but not yet close enough to safety to allow herself even the smallest sense of relief. At some point, exhaustion began to settle in. Not suddenly, but gradually, a slow heaviness that spread through her body, her legs growing weaker, her movements less certain, her mind beginning to strain under the effort of maintaining focus. And yet she continued because stopping for too long would be dangerous, because rest in the wrong place could lead to discovery, because every moment mattered. The night grew colder, the air shifting, carrying a different kind of weight, and she pulled the small piece of cloth closer around her shoulders, not enough to fully protect her, but enough to offer some comfort, some small barrier against the chill that crept in. As the hours passed, her path was not straight, not simple. It twisted, turned, forced her to adjust constantly, to think, to choose, to trust that she was moving in the right direction, even when nothing around her seemed familiar. And that uncertainty was one of the hardest parts. Not knowing exactly where she was, not being able to see the outcome, only believing that each step was taking her closer to something better. Then in the distance, a sound reached her, faint at first, barely noticeable, but real water. She stopped immediately, her body still, her ears focused, listening again, and there it was. The soft, steady sound of moving water, distant but clear. And with that sound came recognition. because she remembered what she had been told. Water could guide, water could lead, water could be followed to safer paths if approached carefully. She adjusted her direction slightly, moving toward the sound, her steps slower now, more cautious, because approaching anything in the dark carried risk. And yet, as she moved closer, the sound grew stronger, clearer, until she could see it faintly, the surface catching what little light remained in the sky. A narrow stream cutting through the forest, its presence both grounding and uncertain. She knelt beside it carefully, her movements controlled, her hand reaching out slowly to touch the water. Cool, real, and in that moment, she allowed herself a brief pause, just long enough to drink, to gather herself, to feel something other than movement and tension, but not long enough to lose focus, because she knew she could not stay, not here, not exposed, not for too long. As she rose again, ready to continue, another sound broke through the night. Different from the forest, different from the water, sharper, louder, distant, but unmistakable dogs. Her body reacted instantly, every muscle tightening, her breath catching as the reality of it hit her fully. They had begun the search, and the sound, though far, was enough to remind her that the time she had was limited, that the distance she had gained was not yet enough, that the danger was closer than she wanted it to be. She did not panic. She moved faster now, but still controlled, because panic would lead to mistakes, and mistakes could end everything. She followed the stream for a short distance, remembering the advice she'd been given, that water could confuse the trail, could make it harder to track, and though she did not know how effective it would be, she used every advantage she could, stepping into the shallow edge, moving through it carefully, letting the water carry away some part of her presence, before stepping out again and continuing into the trees. The sounds of the dogs did not disappear, but they did not grow closer immediately. And that gave her something, a small window, a fragile advantage. She pushed forward, deeper, farther, her body straining, her mind focused, every part of her working toward a single goal: keep moving, stay ahead, survive. And as the night stretched on, as the sounds of pursuit lingered in the distance, Amara continued her journey through the darkness, carrying with her the weight of everything she had left behind, the hope of everything she was moving toward, and the unbreakable determination to reach a place where she and the life within her could finally exist without fear. But the journey was not over, and the hardest part was still ahead. Dawn did not arrive suddenly. It crept slowly through the trees, a faint gray light pushing back the darkness that had protected Amara through the night. And as that light grew stronger, it brought with it both relief and danger, because what had been hidden in shadow would now be seen, every movement more visible, every mistake harder to conceal. And yet she did not stop. She could not stop because the distance she had gained was still not enough. The sound of the dogs, though no longer close, still lived in her mind, a reminder that the search had begun and would not end easily. Her body felt the weight of everything she had endured, the punishment, the journey, the lack of rest, each step heavier than the last, each breath deeper, more deliberate, but still she moved, guided now by the faint light, by the direction she had held on to through the night, by the quiet determination that had carried her this far. The forest began to change again, the density of the trees thinning slightly, the ground more open, the sounds of the natural world shifting as the day took hold. And with that change came a new awareness. She was moving towards something different, something beyond the deep cover of the woods. And though she could not yet see what lay ahead, she felt it, a subtle shift in the air. In the space around her, hours passed, though time had become something difficult to measure, marked only by movement, by effort, by the steady push forward that she refused to abandon. And then, through the trees, she saw something that made her stop, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. A clearing not large, but open enough to break the pattern of the forest, and beyond it, a structure, simple, worn, but standing. A place that did not belong to the plantation, a place that might hold either danger or a possibility. She remained at the edge of the trees, her body still, her eyes fixed on the scene before her. her mind racing through every possibility, every risk, because approaching it could mean safety or it could mean capture, and she had no way of knowing which until she chose. For a long moment, she waited, watching, listening, searching for any sign that would guide her decision, and then she noticed something small, subtle, but important. The way the place felt, not guarded, not watched, not controlled in the way she had known all her life. It was not certainty, but it was enough. She stepped forward slowly, each movement careful, her body ready to retreat at the slightest sign of danger. And as she moved closer, the details became clearer. The quietness of the space, the absence of harsh voices, the stillness that did not carry threat. And then the door opened, her entire body tensed instantly, every instinct reacting, her breath catching as she prepared for whatever would come next. And from the doorway stepped a woman, older, her presence steady, her gaze meeting Amara's without shock, without fear, but with something else. Something that felt like recognition. The moment stretched between them, silent but filled with meaning. And then the woman spoke, her voice low, gentle, asking nothing at first, only observing, only understanding. And in that moment, something within Amara shifted, something she had not fully allowed herself to feel until now. A possibility of safety, not guaranteed, not proven, but present. She did not speak immediately, her voice still caught somewhere between exhaustion and caution. But her presence, her condition, her entire journey was clear enough without words. And the woman stepped forward slightly, not forcing, not demanding, but offering space, offering a choice. A step closer, a chance. Amara moved slowly, her strength nearly gone, her body carrying the weight of everything she had endured, but still moving, still choosing, still reaching for something beyond what she had known. And as she crossed the final distance between the trees and the clearing, something changed again, not in the world around her, but within her. Because she had done it, she had left, she had survived. She had reached a place beyond the control that had defined her life for so long. The woman guided her inside, the space simple, quiet, safe in a way that felt almost unreal. And as Amara stepped across that threshold, the full reality of what she had accomplished began to settle in. Not all at once, not as a sudden wave, but as a gradual understanding that this moment marked the beginning of something entirely new. She was no longer on the plantation. She was no longer under the immediate threat of punishment. She was no longer trapped in a system that denied her control over her own life. And as she stood there, supported, exhausted, but alive, her hand moved once more to her stomach. The familiar gesture now carrying a different meaning. Not just protection, not just survival, but possibility. A future that had once seemed unreachable, now standing just beyond the moment she was living in. Amara had endured what should have broken her. She had faced pain designed to control, to silence, to destroy, and yet she had chosen to resist. She had chosen to act. She had chosen to step into the unknown. And because of that choice, because of that courage, because of that unbreakable will, her story did not end in the pit. It did not end in the fields. It did not end in the darkness of the forest. It continued here. In this moment, in this place where survival became something more, where endurance became freedom. And as time moved forward, as her strength returned, as her life began to take shape beyond the boundaries that had once defined it, her story became something that could not be erased, something that would remain, not just as a memory of what had been done, but as a testament to what could be overcome. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on what you have just heard, because this was not fiction. This was real, this was lived, and there are countless others whose stories were never told, whose voices were never heard. If you believe stories like this should continue to be shared, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Erased But Not Gone. And do not forget to tell us where you are watching from, your city and your country, because stories like this connect us across time and across the world. Until next time, remember, history is not just what is written, it is what we choose to remember. And here we choose not to forget.